Okay, so we begin. So in Parshas Shmos, we have the story of Tzipora doing a bris milah for her younger son, Eliezer. And the Gemara in Masechta Avodah Zarah, Daf Chav Zayin, brings a big debate if a woman can in fact give a bris milah. Is a woman able to do a bris for her son? In other words, we know that a woman definitely doesn't have to. That's a fact. The Gemara in Kedushin says only a father has to give bris milah to his kid. That this is a timely topic. So we know that only a father is obligated to do a bris for his son, as it says.
You start from the beginning. Father's obligated.
As it says that the Eibishter commanded Avraham to give a bris to his son, Avraham gave Yitzchak a bris kasher tziva oiseh lekim, like God commanded him. The Gemara Kedushin says him and not her. Only a father is obligated to do the bris of his son, not the mother. Now that's a fact. The shaila is, but if the mother wants to, could she? Is her bris valid? Does she make a bracha? And if she gave a bris, is the bris valid? Does the kid need what we call hatafas dam bris? Meaning if the bris was invalid, but the fact is the circumcision happened. But if it's halachically invalid, then it's like a kid that was born with the bris milah. What you do is you have to prick out a little bit of blood, known as hatafas dam bris, getting a bit of the blood of the covenant. And the Gemara brings a debate in Masechta Avodah Zarah about a woman giving a bris. A debate between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Because the shaila is, why can't a goy give a bris? So Rabbi Yochanan says, you know why? It says himol yimol. Only someone who has a bris can give a bris to somebody else. And a goy, in fact, whether a goy has a bris or not, is considered uncircumcised. He's always in that category of someone who's uncircumcised, and therefore he can't give a bris to a Jewish boy. But a woman, holds Rabbi Yochanan, Isha command mehila damya. A woman is as if she is circumcised. A woman is considered halachically like she has a bris, to the point that Rabbi Yochanan says she can give a bris to a baby. So the difference between a woman and a goy, neither have a bris. No. Even if the goy had a bris, he's considered uncircumcised. And a woman is always considered circumcised. That's what the Gemara says. But according to Rav learns from a different pasuk, Va'atas brisi tishmar. Rav learns that only those that are subject to the mitzvah of bris can give a bris. That excludes goyim and it excludes women. So it's a debate between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. The Rambam paskins like Rabbi Yochanan that a woman could give a bris, the chatchila a man, but a woman could do it too. Now the Gemara asks, what do you mean? How could there be a debate about this? In this week's parsha, you have a ma'aseh. There's a ma'aseh. Moshe's wife, Tzipora, gives a bris milah, and the Torah, recognizes or affirms the action that Tzipora took. So the Gemara raises this question on Rav. How could it be that he holds a woman won't be able to give a bris? So Rav says, listen, Tzipora began the bris, but Moshe finished the bris. It's a Gemara. So in fact, Rav says that you cannot learn from the story that a woman can give a bris. But nonetheless, we have a rule. Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, halacha always follows Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore, the halacha is a woman can give a bris. So
the Chachamim always say that you do a mitzvah, so it's al shem gomra. So the one who finishes it. So why does the Torah only say that she did it? She only at the beginning. If Moshe finished it, then the zchus should go on Moshe.
That's a great question. So it's only Rabbi Lozer, who was a student of Rav, who said that. Maybe it's a debate. Maybe it's a debate between Rav and the Amora Rabbi Lozer. But you could say other things. There's a... Right. She had the urgency to do it, to make sure that Moshe wouldn't die. But that's a good point. We have to analyze that. Okay. So we have this idea: a woman can give a bris, and there's b'chlal a very general question that consistently comes up, and that is, What's the deal with women and communal responsibilities, doing mitzvahs publicly? There's been our old shilas over the hills about women saying Kaddish. There was some Rabbanim, it's been discussed for hundreds of years if a woman could say Kaddish from the Ezras Nashim during the Minyan, etc. There was shilas about women learning the Megillah. There was shilas about women learning the Megillah on Purim. In Australia, where I come from, there was a shul just down the road from me, which was, they called themselves Shira Chadosha, the new song, feminine. And there was, they were officially formed. They had a mechitza, and the mechitza went right over the bimah. Half the bimah was on the men's side, half on the women's side. And the person that was laning was on the women's side, but those that got the aliyah were on the men's side. They did it, kadas v'kedin, it was glat halacha. And there's a big deal about that, about a woman laning.
Meaning of only women that are lane. Now, didn't we say that in our previous show? If it's only women that are there, a woman can lane.
Mikdashti b'soich b'nei Yisrael. How are you going to have Anyhow, so throughout history, there were definitely women in influential positions. We're going to speak about Devorah was a shofetes. She was a judge. Yael, Rashi writes his commentary to Shoftim, Yael was a judge. But even more recently, the Maharshal, the great Maharshal Reb Shlomo Luria, he writes in a tshuva that his Baba name was Miriam, and she actually went by both her maiden name and her married name. So it was Shapira Luria. Shapira was her maiden name, Luria was a married name, was a real feminist. But the Maharshal says she was extremely scholarly, and she would give shiur to men, and she would stand behind a curtain. Maharshal writes in a tshuva, his Baba would stand behind the curtain and would give shiur. What?
Bruria.
Yeah, Luria.
Bruria.
Bruria. Yeah. Bruria was definitely a tough cookie. Yeah. And even more recent, the Chidor writes about his travels. He says he was by the Pnei Yoshua, and the two of them were sitting at the table, and they were talking, and the Pnei Yeshua's wife was there, and the Pnei Yeshua said a few vertelach, his wife said nothing. Finally, he set up his word, and she said, gut gesagt. And the Pnei Yeshua says, finally, I got something right. That's what the Chidor records. Funny conversation. Rabbi Kiva Eger writes in a letter that he would come home and with his wife, they would have deep philosophical discussions well into the night, sometimes past midnight. He says, till past midnight, they would have deep philosophical discussions, not in learning, but in, Jewish philosophy. The Chida also writes he came to Prague, and he went to visit the Noid de Yehuda, the great Noid de Yehuda, and the two of them were talking, and apparently they spoke together in Lashon Kodesh. And some question came up, and the Noid de Yehuda's wife, from the kitchen, she shouts out in Yiddish, she shouts out the answer. So the Noid de Yehuda wants to translate the answer into Lashon Kodesh, and the Chida says, Kvar purash min ha'isha. It's already been explained from the woman. I understand Yiddish. The Chida understood Yiddish. It's funny. One of the greatest Sfardish Gaonim in the generation before the Chida was the Mishnah Lamelech. The Mishnah Lamelech lived in Turkey, Yehuda Rosinus, and we have a tradition, Yehuda Chitrik writes a story, that the Baal Shem Tov, when he was younger, he met the Mishnah Lamelech in Turkey. Now the Mishnah Lamelech passes away in 1727. The Baal Shem Tov wasn't even 30 years old then, but apparently he already tried to go to Eretz Yisrael at some point, and he went south from Ukraine, and he hits Turkey.
And the story that basically he was able to go.
But that was later in his life. That was später in his life. That was after his Iskalos right. He was still in his 20s when this, because the Mishnah Melch passed away in 1727. Baal Shem Tov was born in 1698. And they spoke, the Baal Shem Tov met him and they spoke, and apparently the Mishnah Melch didn't speak Lashon Kodesh. Didn't speak Yiddish, pardon me. No Yiddish. It's Sfardish. So they spoke in Lashon Kodesh. And the Mishnah Melech asked the Baal Shem Tov, no, what's going on in Ukraine? Shem says, you want to know? He gave him the full deal. Yidden are suffering, bloodshed, hunger, illness, starvation, the works. And the Mishnah Melech closed his eyes. He tossed his head back. And the Baal Shem Tov cautioned him not to have questions and kashas on the Eibishter. That's the Maisa. But the Mishnah Melech didn't speak Yiddish. The Baal Shem Tov wanted to speak Yiddish, but they could only converse in Lashon Kodesh. But the Chidah spoke multiple languages, and he spoke Yiddish as well. Exactly, he was in London.
Where was the Chidah from?
The Chidah is from Eretz Yisrael. The Chidah is born in Eretz Yisrael.
He spoke it
I mean, the Sfarim go by him.
Yeah, sure.
Old English?
He probably picked up something. The Chidah had, he was in London, he speaks about that. By the Chidah had it in incredible memory. There's a story that I saw, maybe Rabbi Shachar could verify it, that the Chidah in one of his travels, he was walking along the water and he sees a boy was drowning. And, he jumps in, he saves the boy's life. He finds out later, the mother of the boy comes running, thank you so much, yada yada. It happens to be this mother's from the royal family. And she tells the Chidah, you saved my kid, what could I do for you? So he told her that I heard that your grandfather, whoever was the king, has a major library, and in it there's many Jewish manuscripts. I would like to have access to that library. Now the issue was this library was a very personal library and no outsiders were let in. So this was a big ask. So the Chidah was told finally you can come in, but you can't bring any paper, no paper, no quills, and no taking any books out. No short-term, long-term borrowing, and you can't bring any writing materials in. You want and browse yourself, you could do that. So he went in for a couple hours, and he memorized apparently hundreds of manuscripts. And he went out, and he took his quill and his paper, and he wrote it down. That's the Maisa, they say. So he was, his memory was, otherworldly. And
Complained he didn't learn that.
Yeah. But he also writes in one of his Sfarim, I think in the Merib Etzba, Mi she'einoi ma'abed zman, if you don't waste time, yes, man lakol, there's time for everything. They say he wrote 82 Sfarim, exactly the amount of years that he lived. He was born in 1724, passes away 1806. Anyway, we're going to quote the Chidah again. Al Kopanim, so yeah, throughout history there's been plenty of women who have been big scholars. And the Sheitel we have today, what we're going to discuss is two things. A controversy from the 1960s if a woman could be a mashkiach, still comes up today. And another one, can a woman be a judge? And the two things obviously overlap. And the reason it links to this week's parsha is this week's parsha we see the din of a woman being able to do a bris milah. Have you ever been to a bris where the moil was a woman? I've never seen it. Because Allah is a chatchila, you get a man. What? And we started with that, but the Gemara brings a machlokes if it was her together with Moshe. But in more recent times. But another way it's related is that you see, Tzipora, her soul had to come back into this world after she died. Tzipora missed the song of Oz Yashir. She wasn't there because Moshe had sent her back. When Moshe was on the way to Mitzrayim, he meets his brother Aaron. Aaron says, Moshe, you're bringing your wife and kids to Egypt. There's enough people suffering. Send them back to Yisrael. So Moshe sent them back, and they weren't there by Yetzias Mitzrayim, and they weren't there by Oz Yashir. I mean, there's a machlokes in Gemara if they were even there by Matan Torah, because they came together with Yisroi. Yisroi came together with his daughter Tzipora and his Einaklach. And there's machlokes in Gemara in the end of Zvachim. When did Yisroi come? Before Matan Torah, after Matan Torah. It could even be Moshe's kids weren't even there by Matan Torah. But definitely Kriyas Yamsuf, they weren't there. And Tzipora felt horrible that she missed the song. So the Mukubalim write, that Amem Ipanu writes, that, and Arizal brings that Tzipora's soul came back as Devorah. And Devorah gave the famous Shira, the Shira of Devorah in the beginning of Sefer Shoftim, that Devorah sang a beautiful song. That was how Tzipora finally got her song. And she came back as Devorah. By the way, it's fascinating. Based on this Kabbalistic tradition, you can explain a Ralbag. Devorah is referred to as Eishes Lapidos. What does Eishes Lapidos mean? So some say she was the wife of Lapidus. Her husband's name was Lapidus. And some say Lapidus is really Barak, the guy that led the war together with her. And Barak and Lapidus are interchangeable names. They mean the same thing. A spark, fire, the same thing. But the Ralbag says Eishes Lapidus means she was a fiery woman. Like Eishes Chayil, a woman of valor. Not that she was the wife of Lapidus. What?
It says Lapid Eish. There is a pasuk Lapid.
Yeah, exactly. Lapid is a fire. So, but here Eishes doesn't mean the wife of. It means a woman of a woman of fire. And he says that her prophecy was similar to Moses, to Moshe, and that's why the Ralbag says she had to separate from her spouse. From all the prophets, only Moshe separated from his spouse. But similarly, Devaira, because if Devaira was married to Barak, but if you look in Sheitel, they lived in different places. Why were they separated? Says that Ralbag, because Devaira was a woman of fire, her prophecy was fiery like that of Moshe, and therefore it warranted her to separate from her spouse. So it's funny, what's the relationship of Devaira with Moshe? But according to the tradition of the Mukabalim, it's understood. She was a Gilgal of Tzipora. In fact, Tzipora complained over the fact that Moshe had separated from her due to his prophecy. And then, funnily enough, history repeats itself. Now she's the one that experiences that type of prophecy, and she has to separate from her spouse. So if you stick the Mukabalim with the Ralbag, it actually comes out quite nice. But Al Kopanim, let's get into today's discussion. So join me in number one. Number one is from the Sefer HaChinuch. The Sefer HaChinuch, one of the Rishonim, Rabbi Aaron Alevi of Barcelona. Most say that is the person known as the Ra'ah, Rabbi Aaron Halevi, who was in the times of the Rashba, in the 1200s. The Chinuch writes like this. Number one, Voneheges mitzvah zu b'schem is talking about the mitzvah of judging and following the majority. It only applies by men. Avaloi b'noshim, not by women. She'einon donis, they can't judge, like we said many places. V'lo yikshe beinecha, what it says by Dveira, she judged the Yidden. He says, no. Efshel lono l'taris, you can answer like this. She wasn't giving psukim. She didn't say you owe him $50,000, yada yada. No. Aval hoisa isha chachoma, she was a wise woman. V'navia, she was a prophetess. V'noisim v'noisnim ima, people came to discuss with her the matter. That's it. They say, what say you? Not that her psak had any halachic validity or weight. Afilu b'dvarim shal isa v'heter. Even, if somebody's mixed their milchik spoon in the fleishik pot, they would ask with her. V'din and gamkein, and also monetary shilas. But not that her psak had any weight. V'lochein kasav alev yishayfta, so she judged the Yidden. She wasn't judging. She was just helping them resolve their issues. That's answer number one. Oi, number two. Neymar will say, shekiblua lodun aleim Roshei Yisrael. There's a din, if both parties, litigants, accept a certain individual to paskin the case, it's binding. Even if that individual is a relative, that individual might be possible to judge for many reasons. But the Roshei Yisrael, the heads of the Yidden, would make it their interest to go to her to be judged. V'acharein kol adam yodin up, and everybody followed. The Kabbalah, because if you accept her authority, vadei akol ksherim, everyone's kosher. Even Judge Judy, right? If you accept it upon yourself, if both parties accept, then doesn't matter what the... And he says, because kol t'nai sheb'momon kayim, when it comes to monetary, any condition is binding. So, that's what the Chinuch says. Umikol makam, nonetheless. Kol zeh she'amarnu, they can't judge, is only k'dzas ksas mefarshim. It's one opinion, a few opinions. It's Yerushalmi tak as well. Shekeinim from Mefurish. The Yerushalmi does say a woman cannot judge. Avoladas ksas min mefarshim. Some people, says the Chinuch, hold kshay to say women could judge. Va'amru, and these people say mikra malay, or it's a clear pasuk. He shafted. Dveira judged. It says in Sanhedrin, kol she'einer kosher lohoid, einer kosher lotun, that if you can't testify, you can't judge, meaning judging is a greater deal than testifying. And if you can't testify, then you definitely can't judge. And women, vade, are not kosher to testify. That the Gemara says a few times in Masechta Shvus, Daf Lamed, the Gemara has a whole omud about it. Women definitely cannot No, Minat Torah they're pasul la'edus. There are certain times the Torah believes them by an aguna. If one woman says that the aguna that she knows that Shprince's husband died, many hold that's only rabbinic dispensation. Rashi Masechta Shabbos holds even when the Eid Echad is a man and he says that Prince's husband died, it's also only believed the Rabbanon. A woman's believed by a Saita to be the Eid Echad to say she saw the actual Tumah, but those are exceptions. Those are not regular testimonies. As far as regular testimony, a woman's not believed. So that's the problem. If a woman can't testify, how could she judge? So says the Chinuch, there's always exceptions. You can't learn from a rule. There's always exceptions. Whoever can testify, can judge. There's an exception. Women, they can't testify, but they could judge. But says the Chinuch, if you ask me from what I've studied and you ask me what I think, they can judge. Like it's brought in Yerushalmi and like it's mashmin our Gemara derech pshitis. Now, what's he referring to? It's mashmin our Gemara derech. He doesn't say. There's a couple different theories, but join to me. And so far, what we have is two opinions. Two opinions. Can a woman judge or not? She can't testify. Maybe she could judge. Join me in number 2. Tosfos deals with this issue in 5 or 6 places in Shas. It's everywhere. And Tosfos says the following. This number 2 is in the end of Masechta Gittin. The Gemara there says, the Eila Mishpatim, the Eibishter tells Moshe, these are the Mishpatim, Asher Tosim. I want you to place them Lifneihem. What does that mean, Lifneihem? So the Gemara says, Hashem's telling Moshe, these are the dinim, I want you to place them Lifneihem. Lifneihem refers to the judges, and it refers to specifically Jewish judges and professional judges. Meaning, when the Torah speaks about a judge, it refers to them as Elohim. An expression of leadership, and that means they're a mumcha. That means they're professionals and they have biblical smicha, etc. So says the Gemara, "V'loy lifnei hadyotis." Hashem tells Moshe, place these dinim in front of the professional judges, not goyim and not hadyotis, not if they're simple people. Frek Tosfos Tema. Number 2, I don't understand. The mashma da'iri kra b'kshedim lodun. Apparently, the pasuk of Eila Mishpatim Asher Tosim Lifneihem is referring to those that are eligible to judge. Hashem's telling Moshe, these are the dinim. Give them over Lifneihem to them, to those professional judges. The problem is, if you look in Parakam of Kiddushin, and if you look in the beginning of Baba Kama, the Gemara there says it's talking about those that are being judged. And Hashem's telling Moshe, these are the mishpatim you should place in front of all the Jews, and all the Jews are subject to these laws. Darshina Minah, we learn from there, the Hishva Akasa, the Eibishter equals Isha le'ish, a woman to a man, the Chol didn't Shebetera. So the Gemara twice says that Lifneim refers to those that are being judged. And the Gemara clearly says, who's them? Women and men alike. So Lifneihem, the them refers to women and men are subject to the laws of Parshas Mishpatim. But the Gemara in Gittin is flipping it, is saying Lifneihem refers to the judges. But if them includes women, that means women could judge. But Ve'isha Psula Lodin, isn't a woman possible to judge? Because it says in Masechta Nida, it's a Mishnah, Kol HaKosher Lodin Kosher Lohoid. Anyone that can judge can testify. I mean, judging is a greater deal than testifying, and therefore the Mishnah says anyone that could judge can automatically testify. But a woman can't testify, like it says in the end of Baba Kama. It says in Masechta Shavuos. So there's a problem. The Mishnah Nida says, it's like a big puzzle over here. You put it all together, you can hit a brick wall. The Mishnah Nida says anyone that can judge can testify. Right? Now, women can't testify. That means they can't judge. Because if they could, you'll have an exception to the Mishnah. You'll have a woman who's able to judge but can't testify. That will go against the Mishnah. Which means women can't judge. But wait a second, are they part of the Lifneihem or not? What's going on? So it says, Tosfos, V'yesh loymar, women could judge. The klal in Perak, the klal we brought from Masechta Nida, Be'isha is talking about a man. Kloimer, any man who's kosher to judge is kosher to testify. But the truth is, there is an exception. Women, so Tosfos is entertaining the possibility. The second opinion we saw in the Chinuch, that women could judge and they can't testify. They're taking an exception to the general rule. And the proof they can judge is because the word lifneihem has two meanings, the judges and the judges, those that are subject to the laws. And when it comes to those that are subject to the laws, the Gemara clearly says women are equal to men, which means the hem of lifneihem, the them includes women. So when lifneihem refers to judges, it includes women as well. But says Tosfos, umidevaira, are you going to quote Devaira? The Chsiv Bar says, "V'hi shoyf des Yisrael." The pasuk says she judged the Yidden. Ein raya. That really proves nothing. You can't prove the Isha Ksheira Lodin she could judge, because Shema loy hoysa dona, maybe she wasn't judging. Elo hoysa malamedes lohem adinim. She was only teaching them the laws, like the first answer that the Chinuch brought, number one. She was just telling them what the law is, not that her word had any halachic strength. Inami, and Tosfos here brings the second answer, the Chinuch, Shema kiblu ois aleim, maybe they will makabel her on them mishum shchina. Since she has the shchina resting upon her, they said, who better to get judged by? So they were makabel. But then he quotes the Yerushalmi that says, Yesh me'ata eini shemi'ida ein adon. He quotes Yerushalmi, just like the Chinuch did. Here, he's quoting Yerushalmi Yuma, that just like a woman can't testify, she can't judge. So Tosfos here is bringing two opinions. Tosfos' first pshat is a woman could judge. But then he says it could be not, and as far as Devaira, there's a couple ways to explain. Either she was just saying FYI, this is what the halacha is, but take it or leave it. And the second thing is that no, her psak was binding because they were makabel.
If you're makabel, you can be makabel between two people, but how are you makabel as...
Both litigants beforehand, both litigants had to agree.
I'm not talking about our argument, I'm talking about like a psak, kosher, not kosher.
Oh. No, so, well, the simple vart of Shoif des Yisrael was monetary matters. Right, monetary matters. Now it happens to be Tosfos deals with this issue in about 5 or 6 places in Shas, and elsewhere Tosfos gives another answer. Tosfos says it was al pi hadibur. He writes this in Masechta Nida, it was al pi hadibur, which means that Devaira, being an Aviyah, she received the green light of the Eibishter to do something which is not regularly accepted halachically. Al pi hadibur, what we call hayroas shah. It was a temporary measure that she could break normative halacha. That's what Tosfos says elsewhere in Masechta Nida. The Rashash has a major issue with that. The Rashash says you can only break halacha in a temporary measure if it's temporary. Hayroas shah means very temporary, such as the story of Eliyahu on Mount Carmel, when he had the famous showdown with the 450 false prophets, and Eliyahu, during the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, he offers a korban outside, shchutei chutz, he's shechting it outside, which is a major Isur D'oraisa. But Eliyahu was a prophet, and he was able to bend the halacha momentarily. But the Rashash says, how could the Devaira Keseder consistently, continuously be judging? If Taka, a woman, can't judge, how could Tosfos give the answer? Tosfos doesn't say it here, but elsewhere he says, Devaira was api adibur, she had a special leniency. What, for her whole life she could break the halacha? It doesn't make sense, says the Rashash. The Rashash says, I like this answer of Tosfos, that they were makabel on themselves b'shum shchina. Because she was connected to God, people felt she's the best address. But to say that she had the right to be an authoritative posik because God gave her, a temporary dispensation, how could that apply for her whole life? That's Rashash's problem. I will tell you, it's not so pashut. There is a major shaila how Yaakov married 2 sisters, right? Now, why is that a big shaila? Goyim are allowed to do that. It's only a shaila. If Yaakov kept Torah, so then why did he not keep this halacha? However, the Gemara in Sanhedrin does quote some Tanoim who believe that Goyim are osur to the same arayas as Yidden. There are Tanoim that believe that just like a Yid can't marry 2 sisters, neither can a Ben Noach. According to which is a major shaila how Yaakov married 2 sisters. He's not allowed to. as a ben noyach. It's one of the 7 mitzvahs is gili arayis. The shaila is, what does the gili arayis of a guy entail? What does it cover? But should you hold that it entails and covers everything that a yid is subject to, so then what did Yaakov do? So some Rishonim, the Yefei Torah, I think the Chizkuni says as well, it was al pi adibur. Yaakov got the green light from the Eibishter to break the halacha and marry 2 sisters. Now he was married to them for a long time.
4 sisters.
He was married to 4. Okay, but that's a medrash. Bill and Zilpa Mevesnish. But Yankov and Leah's Mikra Mola Dibra Koser, that they're sisters. So according to these shittas that you can use al pi adibur for an entire life, so you see that Ashash's assumption was actually not correct. At least according to these opinions. What?
They were Gerim, so.
That's another answer. The only thing is, in order to say they were Gerim, you have to say that there was a Yiddish identity before the Torah was given. And not just Yiddish identity, but that the Yidden had different halachas than Goyim. You know, for example, when Binyamin stole, if a Ben Noach steals, you have to get killed, right? So the Medrash Rabbah quotes a conversation that Yehuda had with Yosef before he knew it was Yosef, telling him that by us, if somebody steals, he just pays back. You know, if he doesn't have, then he gets sold as a slave, but he could just pay back. And everybody asked, but as Ben Noach, Binyamin was Chayiv Misa. So this might be a source that the Yidden actually were Yidden even for the leniencies that a Yid has. If you take that path, then you could also say that someone could convert to the full extent and no longer be married. And there are some that say that as well, right? But another answer is al pi adibur, and the shaila is, what, for years, for decades he's married to the both of them? Apparently, yeah. Apparently al pi adibur can go for a long time. Accordingly, that would be an answer to the Rashash's shaila. What?
But by the case of a marriage, it's one Maisa, so the Maisa is a continuum.
And
Devora,
she's judging.
She's back to the different psakim for different people all her life. That's the question. If it's one psak and the psak goes on.
Okay, fine. Okay, point taken.
Only one psak.
Although, but Yankov wasn't just with Leah one time; it's constantly with her. You know, night after night after night.
But you can't just break
Even, but it's another avera. It's another each time. But each time it's another avera. Who cares if it's the same avera? It's another.
To say it's okay.
Yeah, but the shaila is, how can you just break halacha for so many years? How can you break halacha for so many years? And by that you could say by Dvera that maybe every time people came to her, she got a new green light from the Eibishter to judge. It's possible. Anyhow, but Al-Kaponim, as far as the Rashash's kasha, I think you could answer this way. But anyway, so far, so what do we have by Dvera? So far we have 4 options. Either you learn from Dvera that you could judge, Taka, like the Chinuch says, there are those that say, just look at Dvera, look no further. Or Dvera was different because she was al pi adibur, she had a dispensation by God. Or the litigants were makabel on themselves her authority. Or she was tam letting them know what the dinim of Torah are. Fine. So far we have a debate. Can a woman be a judge? It remains a debate. If you look in the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Kaira Paskin, fortunately or unfortunately, a woman is possible to judge. Now I will just say that there's something which comes to my mind. I haven't seen anybody link this, and therefore I hope I'm not mixing apples and oranges, but there's a clear din in Shulchan Aruch. How old does a man have to be in order to judge? So one opinion is 18 years old, because any less than 18, it's a kid. How's he gonna, if it's the lashon is, how will he help? The oshuk, the one being oppressed and harassed by the plaintiff. He has to be 18 years old, and his muscles are starting to bulge. He has a bissel koyach, he has a bissel gall. But another opinion is even 13 years old, even if he hasn't yet sprouted pubic hairs, which means halachically he's not even bar mitzvah yet. But he could be a judge. It's a shitta brought in Shulchan Aruch. The Tur quotes it too. And all the Mefarshim explain, but such a guy can't even testify. if you're 13 and you don't have the pubic hairs, you're apostle to testify. And you know what they say? If you look in the Smer, the main Mefarish on Shulchan Aruch, he says, when it comes to testifying, the Torah says, Ish, v'amdu shtei anoshim, you have to be a man. A woman is not a man. When does a boy become a man? Not just 13, he has to have the 2 hairs, the pubic hairs. But by judging, says the Smer, the Torah never said you have to be a man. Judging depends on sharpness, on knowledge of the laws and sharpness of mind. And therefore there's a legitimate shitta in Shulchan Aruch in Choshen Mishpat Siman Zayin. There's a shitta that once a boy's 13, even though he's not halachically a man, he doesn't have the hairs, and he can't testify, he could still judge, because judgment depends on sharpness of mind and knowledge of the laws. So, I mean, I don't know how much clearer you can get. According to that shitta, definitely a woman would be no less. Although in Gemara we have an idea that a cotton, sometimes we say, is osi l'klal chiv. Since a cotton one day will become a man, it's just a matter of time, so in a way he's better than a woman, right, who won't become a man. But nonetheless, since the idea that this 13-year-old kid can judge, although he doesn't have the pubic hairs, is because although he's not a man, you don't need to be a man to judge, you just have to be sharp. So then a woman would be no different. I don't know why nobody connects it to halacha, it's pretty clear. Anyhow, like upon him, there's a debate. There's a debate in the Rishonim, can a woman judge? And the halacha brought in Shulchan Aruch, it says, Rabbi Yosef Kaira writes, a woman is possible to judge. But join me in number 6 for a moment. The Chida, in his Sefer Birkei Yosef, Ois Yud Bey says the following. Look at number 6. Even though a woman is possible to judge, that's the psak of the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Kaira, the Chida is not going to argue on that. Although in the Rishonim it's a big debate, but Rabbi Yosef Kaira gives the psak they can't judge, and that's it. But says the Chida, although they can't judge, mikol makom, nonetheless, Isha chacham, if she's wise, yechayla lohayres hayra, she can be a rabbi to paskin. Shilas, if you have shilas, Shabbos shilah, you want to know if your cholon techveis, the cholon went off, the cholon went back on Shabbos, can you eat it? You have a shilah, makashra shilah, a woman can be meira hayra, and you could rely on her just like any rabbi. That's what the Chida says. The Chein Mizbar Mitoisvis, it's clear in Toisus, according to one Shinuya, that Dvorah was teaching the halachas, right? We saw the Chinuch and Toisus both said that it could be Dvorah didn't paskin monetary psakim, but she told them the information, and they could rely on it. And then he's looking safe for Achinuch Mitzvah Pei Gimel. Okay, whatever. He says the Sefer Achinuch holds women can't judge, but in the mitzvah about if a judge is a little intoxicated and is not, he has to hold himself back from paskening, the Chinuch says that applies to a wise woman as well who's able to pasken. Which means the Chinuch, although the Chinuch holds a woman paskening monetary shilas, the Chinuch's conclusion, like we saw in number 1, was nisht. But as far as paskening Isser Veheter and telling you what the facts are and you could rely on it and take it home with you, you're allowed to do. Which is an incredible thing. That means, when you come to shul and you have a shayla and the Rav's busy, you could ask the Rebbetzin if she knows, you could take it to go. It's good. Fascinating. That means, a woman could take many rabbinical responsibilities and make decisions. So this leads us to the following. In 1960, there was a story that took place. In fact, if you look on the next page, there's a couple shtiklach from Rabbi. It starts in number 7, Purim Tovshin Chof. It was Purim 1960. There was a fellow by the name of Baruch Pupka. He was a rabbi in Pittsburgh. Okay? He was there already for many years, a respected Rav. And there was a young family who were Holocaust survivors. And they were, they had some young kids. The father and mother themselves were survivors. And the father was a mashkiach, and that's how he made a parnasa. This is going back more than 60 years ago. Unfortunately, the father died suddenly. And now Nebuch, you have an almona, who's a refugee from Europe. Who knows how good her English is? She has little kids, nishtok and geld, there's no money. So the shaila was, maybe she could take over her husband's job. She can continue her husband's hashgacha. So the rabbi wasn't sure, so he turned to the Moshe. He turned to the Moshe Feinstein and asked him, what do you think? What do you think about a woman being a mashgiach? Imagine you come to a chasana and you want to know who's taking responsibility for the food here. And there's a woman over there. I think most of us would raise our eyebrows. But the shaila is, okay, then you stop raising your eyebrows. Can you eat? Would you eat? So go back to number 3 for a second. What? So we're going to see 2 differences. So the bench has a great shaila. We're going to see.
What he said. What's the difference than your house? Your house, your wife cooks, right?
So there is a general din like this. Eid echad ne'emun bisurin. One witness is believed by prohibitions. The Gemara mentions a few times, which means you go to someone's house, you eat their food. How do you know what the woman's serving you? She's trusted. She's trusted biblically and rabbinically as well. You can rely on her. Men and women. In fact, Tosfos' opinion is, we learn it from a woman. We learn it from a woman. The Torah says that if a woman is a nida, she counts v'safra lo shivas yom, she counts her 7 clean days. Exactly. Law la'atzma, exactly. The word law herself means no one else knows. There's no witnesses there. She does it herself. She tells her husband, I went to mikveh, and Shalom al Yisrael, and she's believed. By the way, back in the day, there used to be that if a woman went to mikveh, she would get a special card. And she would have to show her husband the card. There's an incredible story with, by the way, that the Maggid of Mizritch's parents didn't have kids for years. The Maggid's father actually spent most of the year away from home. He was a Melamed in some town, and he would come home once a month, obviously Yom Tov and this and that, but otherwise, most of the time he was away being Melamed in somebody's home. But he would make sure to come home when his wife went to mikveh. Anyhow, how he would know the exact day, I don't know. But on that particular day that she was supposed to go to mikveh, there was a horrible storm. And she was sure her husband's not coming from the other town. So she doesn't go. She doesn't make any preparations. All of a sudden, boom, evening comes, her husband knocks on the door. He's like, I didn't think you were coming. Let me run to the mikveh. So she runs to the mikveh. The mikveh was already closed. The mikveh lady was there, and she tells the Maggid's mother, I'm sorry, we're closed. It's over. Gegangen, come back tomorrow. She's begging and pleading. They say no. So the Maggid's mother feels, horrible. She's going to go home. As she's walking down the street, she sees a wagon coming towards the mikveh. And there were a few women, very chosheва, wealthy women, and she knew the mikveh lady was going to open the mikveh for them. And kachava, the wagon stops by the mikveh, and the mikveh lady's like, opens the door, come in, the royal treatment. And she tells the Maggid's mother, all right, come in, you can come in too. So she finally gets in, she toivels, and afterwards she walks home. It's dark outside. She's walking home, and then after about 10 minutes she realizes she didn't get the paper. And by now the mikveh lady had left. She knows it, and she starts crying. Because after all this, first they wouldn't let her in. She finally goes in, now she doesn't have the paper. She starts crying. Out of the corner of her eye, she sees on the side of the road, she sees something white on the side of the road. She walks over. It's a card from the mikveh. Somebody must have dropped it before, or who knows, the Eibishter sent it. She finds a card from the mikveh saying that you toivelt. So she picked it up, and Mamash fell from heaven. And she brought it home, and she was in such good spirits. From that night, the Maggid was conceived. From that night, the Maggid of Mizrich was conceived. Anyhow, this is a ma'aseh the Chassidim say. But that was the minhag back in the day. Today, I don't know. Nicht in unser Kreisen, we don't have this minhag. The woman's believed. So, first of all, let's just go straight. Look at number 3. Paskins the Rambam. Ein ma midden melech mikahal gerim. You can't make a melech from gerim, afilo after many generations, until this guy's mother is Jewish. In other words, if it's all gerim, marrying into each other, they're fine, perfect, yid and everything, but not to be a melech. Shenemar, Lo sucha lo seis alecha ish nachri. It says in Sheitel, you can't appoint a stranger who's not your brother. And the Rambam says not just Malchus, but all Sororis be Yisrael, anything. To be a general in the army, not even of 50, not even of 10, even to be appointed on the irrigation of a river into different fields, not from a ger. Ve'ein tzarich leimer, a judge or a nasi, that has to be from a Jew, or at least someone whose mother's Jewish. Shenemar, what's the raya? Mikerev achecha tosim alecha melech. From your brothers you place a king. Tosim means any mesimis sha'aton meisim alecha, any point of authority has to be from a brother. The Rambam continues, Ein ma'midin isha b'malchus, a woman can't be a king, as it says melech, soim tosim alecha melech, a king, v'loi malka, not a queen. Not a queen. This drasha that the Rambam quotes is from the Sifri, a halachic medrash on Sefer Dvarim, and all the Mefarshim are already banging their heads into the wall. The Torah always speaks in Lashon Zachar, and we don't usually, every time it says Bnei Yisrael, we exclude Bnei Yisrael. No, usually we don't. So how do you know Melech means not a Malka? But that's what the Sifri says. But here's the Rambam's clincher. V'chein kol mesimis b'Yisrael, all posts, ein memanim bohem ela ish, you only appoint a man. So the Rambam is comparing the din of a woman to that of a ger. Just like a ger can't be a melech or can't have any position, so too a woman can't be a king or any position. Wow. So the Shaila now, let's go to the letter, go to the other page, the letter of Reb Moshe. If a woman, so according to the Rambam, could a woman judge? L'cher zichernish, that's a point of authority. It's a point of authority. The fact that Tosfos and the Chinuch entertained the option that a woman could judge, apparently they disagree with the Rambam. And they will limit the exclusion of a woman to a king. Right? The fact that the Tosfos and the Chinuch and many Rishonim entertain the possibility that a woman could judge and be a real judge means they obviously disagree with this statement of the Rambam that a woman cannot have any position of authority. So how does that relate to Rav Moshe's Tshuva? So look at number 7. Hine, b'dvar ha'almana, there's a widow, the wife of a Talmid Chacham, he was a mashkiach on kashrus. Nebuch died, she's left with nothing, she has no parnasa for her kids, the orphans. But she's a tzniistik, a woman, she fears God be'emes, she's wise, she's clever, she's a woman of responsibility, you can rely on her. Maybe she could take over her husband's job as mashkiach and she'll have parnasa. And you want to know what's my opinion. So says Reb Moshe v'hinei, as far as ne'emanus, you can believe her. You can believe her. And in the section of 7 and 8, Reb Moshe says, the rules are like this. The rules are like this. When do we say one witness is believed by Yisurim? Not always. The rules are like this. If the witness has biyodai, it's in their ability to make it kosher, you always trust them. If it's not in their ability, it's not biyodai, then they're only believed if there's no certain isur in the story. It's not as chazik isura. It's not an officially already established prohibition. So if there is already an established prohibition, the witness is only believed if it's biyodai, if it's in their ability to change it and make it kosher. If it's not biyodai, then they're only believed if it's not as chazik isura, that the isur hasn't been established. And I'll give you. I mean, we learn both of these things from a nida, and it's a taisis in the beginning of Gittin. The Maharsha explains, when a woman tells her husband, "I'm toiveld and I'm tor," you're really believing her on two things. Number one, the moment the woman sees blood, she carries chorus until she goes to mikveh. That's one thing. But so that it's chazik isura, the isur chorus has been established, but it's in her ability to go to mikveh. The other thing is she has to be believed that the blood stopped and she had 7 clean days. Now that's not biyad. The woman doesn't have the ability to stop the blood. But the blood will definitely stop on its own. It doesn't go forever. And therefore it's not considered an established isur. That's what the Maharsha says in Tosfos. And that's the source that an eidechel is believed in these two scenarios. If there is an established isur, they're believed if they have the ability to change it. If there's no established isur, they're believed even without the ability. And Rav Moshe wants to say the same thing with this woman. So look at number 8. Go to number 8. V'im kein ba'ashgacha al kashrus. When a woman's a mashkiach, shebeyaduhu sheloi lahaniach lahachal dvarim asurin. If a woman's a mashkiach, it's beyada. If something went treif in the kitchen, she has the power not to serve it to the people. If she's a mashkiach in a restaurant, or if she's a mashkiach by a simcha, the woman has the power to decide if it should be served or not. So it's biyada. In addition, it's not as chazak, it's even better, says Rabbi Moshe. It's not even established isser, because even if the hashgach is by someone who's not frum, right, that doesn't mean he has for sure treif stuff, or anything that was an issue. Ein lahachshiv, you can't consider that is chazak isura. Yeah, if somebody, if a fryer person is opening up a kosher establishment, there's no reason to assume he has treifa stuff there. It's just a suffix. That's not called chazik isura, is that the isur has already been confirmed at some point. There's no confirmation if the guy's just fry. By the way, there's just to bring out a story, this happened about a year ago. It's mamash a horrible story. I don't like sharing horrible stories, but the ma'isa is, it happened in Eretz Yisrael a year ago that there was officially a kosher meat store, a restaurant, a deli of some sort, but they were lax in their mashkichim. They did not have a proper mashkiach. And this woman ate there, and afterwards she wanted a coffee. They ran out of parva creamer, so one of the workers went and bought milk cream. Gave her milk cream. This woman was lactose intolerant. She died. Happened a year ago in Eretz Yisrael. She died in the Fleishik store because they gave her milk. And this was officially a kosher place. And the problem was they didn't have a proper mashkiach. Mamash a horrible story.
A little more than intolerant.
What?
A little more than lactose
Yeah,
intolerant.
yeah. Well.
She was already, it's the from side.
But akopanim, in other words, these things can happen, but they're all fakers. There's no reason to assume something like that would happen. If there's no mashkiach, it could happen. But there's no reason to assume that it would. And therefore, it's just a suffix. And says the Rabbi Moshe, even if you want to consider that let's say the woman doesn't have really the strength to tell the owner, you can't serve this, it's not really biyada. But because it's not as chazik yisura, you believe her anyways. Let's go to number, fine. But so Rav Moshe says, as far as her belief, you would trust her. But here's the issue. The issue is the Rambam says you can't give a woman a position of authority. Is being mashkiach a position of authority? Is it a position of authority? As far as the trust, you trust her. As far as the eidechem, she's believed. The Sheitel is it a position of authority? Although I will tell you, there's a ma'aser. Rabbi Isaac Chodef was a big Litvish Gaon, 180 years ago. So apparently he was once by a meeting of different Rabbanim, and while he was there, he mentioned, after I pass away, after 120, when I go upstairs, I'm going to summon the Noide B'Yehuda, and I'm going to demand that he owes me 5 ruble. Why? He never met the Noide B'Yehuda. Why is he saying this? He says, because the Noide B'Yehuda writes in one of his tshuvas that there's a sefer called Divrei Emes, written by one of the big Sfardish Gedolim. It's a great sefer. I bought the sefer, it cost me 5 ruble. I looked into the sefer and I did not find anything worthwhile. Sefer is a big waste of time, and therefore the Noide B'Yehuda cost me 5 ruble. This is what Rabbi Isaac Chodef says at the meeting. Reb Chaim Brisker was a young man, apparently, and he was there, and he tells him, you would go to somebody's house and trust the wife for their food? He says, so Rabbi Isaac, of course. Eid echad ne'eman b'isurim. One witness is believed, it applies by women too. So Chaim Brisker says, well, if you look in that sefer, Divrei Emes, that you just threw under the rug, he has a whole siman there where he discusses that there are some Rishonim who hold that when you go to someone's house and you trust the wife, it's not because the woman is believed. The woman has no ne'emanos. Rather, we follow the majority. Most women in the world, statistically, serve kosher food. And therefore, you could rely that this woman comes from the majority. A fascinating thing. Aruba delesa come on. Most people in the world, do ABC, so you can assume this person's from the Roiv. And Reb Chaim Brisker said to Rabbi Isaac Chodef, it's a fascinating tshuva in the Divrei Emes, and that tshuva itself is worth 5 ruble. A funny story. But Moshe says, as far as the trust of the woman in the restaurant, at the wedding, you can trust her. The shaila is, what about the fact that she has a position of authority? So look at number 9. Says Rav Moshe, Avol nir, it seems, shelamasha biyarti, what I explained. You think hashgacha is considered an authority? It's only if the avoid is neged rotzen balabayas. You know when kashrus is considered a level of authority? If the owner of the establishment has to listen to the mashgiach. If the mashgiach can tell the establishment, you can't serve that, that's a problem, and the balabayas, the owner, has to bend their will to the mashgiach's authority. So says Rav Moshe, but I have an answer. The woman who's mashgiach should not be the one who runs the hechsher. She should be hired by a rabbi. And she works for the rabbi. And the balabayas, when the balabayas pays the money, Yishalem Ascharav, he pays the money to the rabbi. And then the rabbi will give the woman her cut. Sha'az, the woman is not a position of authority. Yes, she could tell the balabayas what to do, only because she's representing the rabbi of the hechsher. Because she has to listen to the rabbi as he tells her. And she's only implementing his psakim. Because when someone goes to a restaurant, right, and you're relying on the mashgiach, you're not relying on the mashgiach, you're relying on the hechsher. Is it MK, whatever the hechsher might be. The mashgiach, really is as obviously a great person and everything, but they're really just implementing the rules which are set up by the hashgacha. The Rav of the hashgacha is the one who decides what is fit to be served, what not, and the mashgiach is only the man on the ground. He's only the soldier in the front who's implementing. And she's only doing meleches harav. She's just a poil ba'alma, and he says this would work. So this was Rav Moshe's psak. Rav Moshe says like this, I know not everyone agrees with the Rambam, but the Rambam, the fact is, says a woman can't have a position of authority. But I want Nebuch in the story, these Holocaust survivors, I want the woman to be able to have a job. So make sure it's not her own hechsher. She's not the one calling the shots. She is just implementing the psakim of the rabbi.
Then can you have a goy also?
What?
Can you have a goy as a mashgiach? He's employed by...
No, but a goy has no nemonus. A goy is going to end up going to the store next door and bringing a dairy creamer instead of a parva creamer. The woman has nemonus. She's believed. The shaila is a position of authority. So as long as you deal with that. So Rav Moshe printed this. What?
She could work for a company like the KM or the OK.
Yeah, as long as she works for, she has to answer to somebody else. In other words, a woman can't have her own hechsher. A woman can't have her own hechsher. Rav Moshe printed.
Get paid from the rabbi, not from the boss.
He did throw that in. Yeah.
So what about? There is hashgacha that the boss, I know a restaurant that used to work.
He pays straight to the mashgiach.
And the Baal Habayit used to pay her the money straight.
Okay, so that might be just a detail thrown in, but is the mashgiach, that woman, is she answerable to somebody else? Is she answerable to somebody else? In other words, right.
Letter of violation comes from who?
What? In other words,
Letter of violation.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Right. Oh, so the Moshe printed this tshuva in a journal that came out in the 1960s known as Hamor. The editor of that journal, his name was Meir Asmul or something, and he printed this, and he had lots of issues with this. And he wanted to tear apart this whole tshuva of Rav Moshe. And he writes, with all due respect, once you say with all due respect, right, you can pull the rug completely.
Letter to the editor.
Well, he has major he said, no offense, but yeah, exactly. Then you run, exactly. Then you run for your life. See, his main problem with Rav Moshe was that once you allow women to be mashgichim, what's next? Women are going to be presidents of the shuls. Women are going to be rabbanim. Women are going to be chazonim. And women are they're going to run for president in Eretz Yisrael. He wrote all these things. And it's funny, he told Rav Moshe, the Rambam says a woman can't be, have letters of, positions of authority. But the Rambam, the Reb Moshe says, not everyone agrees with the Rambam, right? Like we mentioned, the fact that Tosfos and the Chinuch and other Rishonim entertained the svara that a woman could mamish judge with all the authority involved in that. Apparently they disagree with the Rambam. So this guy tells Reb Moshe, the moment you say that some disagree with the Rambam, you're opening up the door to all Reformed Jews. We don't need the Rambam. We're going to take the other opinions who allow. And who knows how far they're going to go. They'll go everywhere until Queen. They'll allow the woman to do everything until Queen. So number 10, Reb Moshe writes back to him another letter. Hine mashakosov kvoid terasai harama. You know, he tells us, Reb Meir Asmo, shemitzad shuvasi, my tshuva that I wrote, that I asked on the Rambam, that the Rambam says all women are unfit for any levels of authority, and Reb Moshe says, I don't know exactly where the Rambam got it from. When we learned the Rambam, we said the Rambam just compares it to the din of the ger. And that's what the Mabit says in his commentary, Curious Sefer. But Reb Moshe says, I don't know exactly where the Rambam saw that very fact that you compare the two. The Gam Shemash from the Reb Moshe, I also wrote that not everyone agrees with the Rambam. So you, Reb Meir Asmo, wrote back to me, Yoitze Michshul. How could I say that? Look at the stumbling block that will happen. They're going to make women president, B'Medinas Yisrael, president of Israel. So says Reb Moshe, we are not responsible. La'anhogas hamalchus d'sham. I am not responsible here. What they're going to misconstrue my words in Eretz Yisrael. We're not achroin. They're with b'avodaseinu harabim. They're koifrim. They're mumarim. And they bechlal. Frankly, they don't really care what a rabbi in New York says, anyways. And more than that, says Reb Moshe, if everyone would agree with the Rambam, they wouldn't care anyways, right? Va'afim kuli alma yizbukar Rambam. And even if it was clear in Gemara, even if the Chumash said clearly that a woman couldn't have a position of authority, they wouldn't care in Israel. They wouldn't care in Israel. Just I don't care about any other Isurim hachamurim b'yaser, which I'm a furish in Gemara Psukim. So don't tell me, says Reb Moshe, that I'm causing a michshul in Eretz Yisrael. What about they might start appointing women in the shuls in America? Maybe my tshuva is going to allow women to become presidents or have important positions in the shuls, right? Chairman of the boards and this and that. Nami loy shaykh, not shaykh, a mixture will happen. Says Reb Moshe, because the Batei Knesiyos and the Moistus in America, they run up derech haTorah. So therefore they wouldn't make any rash decisions without asking a rabbi. Now, they're going to ask a Rav, right? If that Rav knows the Rambam doesn't allow it, so that Rav, he'll remember the Rambam. I'm not doing any damage by saying people disagree. And he says, and those that are reform and conservative, that don't really keep the Torah, right? Then the reason they're going to point to women is not because I said people argue on the Rambam. They don't care about the Rambam says at all. Anyhow, so the Moshe is defending himself against the attacks of this Rabbi Meir Asmo. The end of it is, though, Rav Moshe says, I don't back off from my tshuva. I still believe a woman could be a mashkiach, provided that she's working under a Rav. So she's not the one calling the shots. Because, says Rav Moshe, many taka disagree with the Rambam. Tosfos, all those that hold the woman could officially judge, apparently hold the woman could have a position, could be the Rav as well. Says Rav Moshe, but listen, the Rambam's the Rambam. The Rambam's the Rambam, right? And therefore you have to be worried for the Rambam's opinion, and to circumvent the Rambam's problem of the woman's status of a position of leadership, she has to work under a Rav HaMachshir. And that was Rav Moshe's psak. Rav Menashe Klein, big Rav in Borough Park, contemporary of Rav Moshe, he says the same thing. And he would tell people, Rav Moshe allows a woman to be mashkiach, but don't forget Rav Moshe's important clause. She has to be underneath a Rav in order that he shouldn't have an issue with the Rambam's din of a woman not having a position of authority. Reb Moshe Sternbuchem, will finish with this, he's a big Rav in Eretz Yisrael. He also dealt with this issue. He believes it depends, if a woman could be mashkiach, it depends if the owner of the restaurant is frum or frei. He says, what's the difference? And he brings a very good argument. There's a Tosfos in Masechta Pesachim, Daf Daled. The Gemara there says, why are women believed on Bedikas Chametz? A woman could tell you she cleaned the house, right? And you could believe her. So the Gemara says, because once the husband was mevatel all the chametz, so biblically he doesn't own the chametz. It's only rabbinic to clean the house. It's only rabbinic a woman's believed. So Tosfos there says, what? A woman's only believed because B'dika is Drabanan? What about Eidecha Nem B'Surin? A woman's believed to serve you meat, and you don't know what it is, she can tell you it's kosher. A woman could shecht and tell you she did a good shchita. What's this? So Tosfos answers, when it comes to something tedious and something which has a lot of work. Tirchi Yisera. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Something which is a bit of a burden, a woman would not be believed if it's Minat Torah. So the Gemara had to say, B'dikas Chametz is D'Rabbanan. So says Rav Moshe Sternbuch, there's a big difference if the owner of the establishment is frum or fry. And I've heard this from many mashkichim, that if the owner is frum, it's mamish, it's a breeze. You could just walk in. If the owner is fry, you mamish have to be on top of your game, because there could be issues, I'll call it Sad V'Shal, anywhere you go. So Moshe Sternbuch said that if the owner is fry, so then the mashkich, it's a tirchi yisera, there could be issues anywhere and everywhere. And then a woman shouldn't do it, based on that tesis. If the owner is frum, then the woman could do it. Fascinating pshara, he says. What?
It's the opposite.
Because the guy will listen more than
Exactly.
from the guys.
Make
Jonas Pizza?
And okay, we're going to finish over here. All right, what? What place?
It was milchik, and right next to it was a fly chicken cheese.